look at a slightly different example of factoring a quadratic expression. So when I look at this quadratic, first of all, I know it's a quadratic because it's of degree 2. Okay, we looked at that in the previous video. That makes it a quadratic. However, it's not in standard form because standard form needs to be ax squared plus bx plus c, which means I need to put this in the proper form. So I need to rewrite this to be 6x squared minus 2x minus 8. So now it's in standard form. Okay, so I'm not going to spend as much time as I did on the last video going over this. I'm just going to go through the process. So I'm going to be factoring this. I'm going to rewrite this over here. So I have 6x squared minus 2x minus 8. I'm going to look for the greatest common factor here. And I see that I do have a greatest common factor. So if I'm looking at 6, and I'm looking at 2, and I'm looking at 8, notice when I'm looking for the greatest common factor, they're only positive at the first step. Second step is always different. So this is 1 times 6, 2 times 3, this is 1 times 2, this is 1 times 8, 2 times 4. So right here, I can see that my greatest common factor is 2. So that means I'm going to factor out a 2. There's no x in this last term, so I cannot factor out an x. So I'm going to factor out a 2. And remember, when I factor something out, I cannot throw it away. So I factor every term by 2, and I'm going to bring that outside of parentheses, and then I'm going to divide. Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3x squared. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1, so that's negative x. And the negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is step 2. I'm going to multiply my first and my last term. So you have to be careful because this last term is negative. So that means I'm going to have 3x squared times negative 4, which gives me negative 12x squared. So I'm looking for the factors of negative 12x squared. And I want the factors to be the sum of negative x, which is the same thing as negative 1x. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my little table. So I'm going to pretend this is positive, and then I'll figure out the negative. So this is going to be the same as 1x times 12x, 2x, times 6x, 3x, times 4x. So when I multiply these out, I'm going to get 12x squared. Okay, but one of them needs to be positive. One of them needs to be positive, one of them needs to be negative. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave the front positive, and then I'm going to make these negative. So I am adding them together. I'm just adding a negative 12, a negative 6, a negative 4. So I'm going to see which one adds up to negative 1. So this here adds up to negative 11x. This adds up to negative 4x. And this one gives me negative 1x. So that means this is the one that I want right here. That replaces my middle term. So the key to doing this is I'm going to save this for last, save for the end, okay? And we can't forget that little 2, because if we forget this little 2, we get it wrong. Okay? So we want to remember to come back to that. I'm going to rewrite what's inside the parentheses. It's 3x squared minus x minus 4. This minus x is what gets split up. So that's 3x minus 4x. That's what that gets split up to. That's what we figured out right here. And then I simply bring down my 3x squared and my minus 4. Okay, so now the next step I need to do is I need to group this. I'm going to show you how to group this. Because of this minus, you have to be careful. This is 3x squared plus 3x and minus 4x minus 4. So notice this minus 4 went inside the parentheses, and I'm saying and in between. This was a little different from the other one. So now I'm going to look, this is a little easier. I'm going to look for a common factor here. I can see my common factor is 3, and also I have a common factor of x. So 3x gets divided out, so that gives me 3x, and then I have my parentheses. Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1. This is 1. And x squared divided by x gives me x. 3x divided by 3x is 1. So this gives me a plus 1. Now, what am I going to factor out of here? Well, it looks like it's 4. But I'm going to warn you, when the first term in the second group is negative, that means we're going to factor out a negative. So this negative 4 is going to come here. So like in the last one before, I did a plus. Now I'm going to do a minus 4, and then I'm going to divide. So negative 4x divided by negative 4 is x. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is a plus 1. Okay, so this is a plus minus, which is the same as just a minus. So if I simplify this, I get this. What is the same in both of these? This x plus 1 is a common factor in both terms. That means I can divide out x plus 1. So when I divide out x plus 1, I have x plus 1 in the front. So x plus 1 divided by x plus 1 divides out to 1. What am I left with? I'm left with 3x minus 4. So these are my factors. These are the factors of, what was my original? 6x squared minus 2x minus 8.